Hello, everyone. We're getting started very soon. We're waiting on our host Jay to hop on. There he is. I will hide, but I will be doing the slides.
Hi, good evening. I am so happy to be joining you again here tonight. My name is Jay Brandon, and I am the National Programs and Political Director here at Higher Heights. Higher Heights is a national organization dedicated to working to build, equip, and expand Black women's representation as well as participation in the civic discourse and political world that we live in today. That work encompasses education, like programs that we're facilitating through this training series, as well as political endorsements and working directly with candidates as well as elected officials. Tonight, I am really excited to begin or to be having this conversation and to be continuing this wonderful, powerful training series that has been underway. So far, we have done equity building, which I led myself, talking about how do we utilize our leadership and the fact that we all play a role in equity building. That was followed up by Kyra, our political organizer, who you just saw, where she led us in a civics 101, but just not just the basics, but telling us and identifying who do we talk to when we have issues that we want resolved by our elected officials. And last week, just ahead of what is today, the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, Ashley Shannon, Esquire, came and delivered a wonderful presentation on voting rights and the growing movement for restoration for those individuals. And tonight, this is a conversation, as I said, that I'm excited to be having, and I'll introduce the guests in a second. But we're going to talk about gender wars and bridging the gaps. And so before I introduce our guests, I want to just kind of level set on how we got here. Last year, 2024, former Vice President Kamala Harris ran for the presidency in 107 days. Be sure to be on the lookout for that book that's coming. And in that, what we saw was a lot of discourse and dialogue around Black men and Black women and what that support would look like or didn't look like. And in that, it just kept adding fuel to this fire of divide that we know has existed in the subculture of our community for far too long. And oftentimes we hear about we should be having the conversations, we should be having this conversation. Well, tonight is that opportunity to have this level setting conversation. In 2020, what we saw were Black men and Black women being the black backbone of the Democratic Party, as well as voter turnout to elect former President Biden. In that, as I said, we heard a lot of discourse in 2024 about this divide, and what it did was it tried to pull away Black men and Black women. But when we come down to it and we see the numbers, in real large parts, the community isn't divided. Over 80% of the Black community, men and women, again supported former Vice President Kamala Harris for president. So that shows and represented that we were not truly divided as the socials, the media or the parts of the media that work to keep us divided would say. We saw that there was alignment on the issues, that there was alignment on the need for more educational resources, that there was alignment on job access, there was alignment on economic growth and prosperity. And so the point of this conversation is to be able to really just identify that we are all roughly talking about the same things and wanting the same levels of progress. And then we want to be able to provide what that can look like, how we get there. And so the goals are to be able to represent that you'll be able to see, in this particular case, two Black men being able to host and facilitate a conversation that talks about bridge building. We want to be able to provide tools and tips for how to have more conversations, the tough conversations that do need to happen, and in that serve as a resource for the future ongoing conversations that will continue to bridge us together, helping to advance our collective liberation and advancement. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Conscious Lee to the Zoom chat for a nice dialogue on bridge building. Is he here? I'm waiting for him to enter. Ah, there we go. How's it going?
Going good, man. Going good.
So as I've already said, I'm excited to have this conversation. I think the beginning of this started last year when we met at the DNC on in a moment where we were recognizing former Vice President Kamala Harris in her historic run for the presidency. And we began that conversation then, and it's now a moment where it's come full circle. And so just really quickly tell the folks how you're doing. And then we'll, kind of get into a Q&A between the two of us, and then we'll have some questions from the audience at the end.
Yeah, how y'all doing? I'm George Lee, aka Conscious Lee. My work sits at the intersections of power and domination. I love to explore identity issues, race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, especially centering the Black experience, because Black experience, Black identity touches all those things. And being able to generate provocative thoughts around power and domination and how it positions us as Black people uniquely. Looking forward to having a very real raw conversation about gender wars, because I think that it has a big detriment on how dialogue impacts how we talk about policy, especially when it comes to championing policies around Black women, and how gender wars virtually allows for different individuals to either be some haters and resist the type of policies we're trying to push forward in terms of Black women progression, and just thinking about the uniqueness of like black boys and Black men. I don't know what you just asked me, Jay, but I want that was on my heart. That's what I said.
That was our opening. So before I get into the questions, I think it's for me like necessary to like talk about it in some of these other ways, given that what you just talked about or mentioned in your opening about the need to really challenge gender wars because they prohibit us from being able to recognize Black women's leadership, Black men's humanity, Black men's efforts in that leadership, and then collectively our collective responsibility to be working in tandem with one another. So for myself, I serve, like I said, as the national programs and political director here at Higher Heights, a Black woman-led organization, an organization where the majority of the staff are Black women. And for me, I am absolutely proud to be serving in this role and have the honor, the ability to lead in this way. And I always go back to, I talked about this in my interview process when, interviewing for this role, was for me, this was an opportunity to be able to utilize the privileges that I know that I possess, the ones that are, that come to me simply by walking through the world as a man, but then the other ones that I've also been able to access just through education, economics, and so forth. And that in this capacity, it would be on me to help to lead the frontier of opening up the more opportunities for bridge building, for the advancement of Black women leadership. And so my first question really is around being able to level set, because in this role for myself, I see it as an opportunity to, like I said, to open up some new doors and be able to facilitate these sort of conversations. So level setting around gender wars, right? We hear a lot of talk, like I said, out in the media, this place, that place. But when we hear gender wars and topics alike, I think we have to identify what's really being said, what's fact, what's fiction, but also cue in and hone in on like how do we move forward. So are gender wars a trauma response? Are they a distraction? And what would you give to people to help bring them, past that conversation?
I think that gender wars are a trauma response, and I think that sometimes trauma responses can be a distraction for what's really going on and what we should be focused on. But I do think that uh, and really pushing the dialogue forward. It's not just trauma. I think that a lot of cisgender, heterosexual black men and black women try to emulate white American politics at the core. And I think that as a result, because there's a lot of intersectional analysis that lack, we tend to look at each other through a very insular lens that's just about gender. And all we do is make the black silent in many different instances, especially when we're able to account for the unique ways that black women face sexism, misogyny, the unique ways that black men are, excluded from education. And I think that because we don't get into the nuances about how black women and black men uniquely, engage, it makes where we replicate a lot of the dialogue that come from first wave feminism and second wave feminism of how white men were responding to white women and vice versa. And I feel like that's the framework of intersectionality. I think gives us a good way to contextualize what's going on.
So I just to also bring the audience along throughout this part of the dialogue, you'll see some slides represented on the screen. They're to help continue to add more context to what we're talking about. We won't fully cover each slide section. The presentation will be made available once we put out these videos following the series. But it is, like I said, to help follow along. Kyra, go back to the contextualize, because I want to stay there for a second to really, again, continue this level setting piece of the conversation. You mentioned that, and this is in the presentation as well. You mentioned that we all are impacted by whiteness, and that there are unique ways that Black women have. Been impacted. There are unique ways in which Black men have been impacted. And you also talked about the historical nature that has come as a part of that resistance. And so when we talk about intersectionality, can you break down just a little bit more on what that is, what it is to observe it, like what it is to observe someone else's intersectional points and be able to say, okay, I can recognize for myself my, sort of the impacts that have been on me. I'm now able to hear someone else's story. How do we make space, in that to do that? Here, be able to sit with our own, impacts as well as hear someone else's story.
Man, I think you got to be able to sit with being the idea of being an oppressed oppressor in many different instances, especially if we are creating a identity where we can see it through the binary of powerless, powerful, or oppressed oppressor. And given your social economic background, I'll use my example. I'm from Bryan, Texas. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm cisgender, meaning I identify with the gender that I was assigned at birth. I'm straight. I speak English. You know what I'm saying? I'm a leftist. Uh, 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 I have no religion. My culture is Black. You know what I'm saying? These are all the various ways that my identity comes about. But I think in terms of intersectionality, I'm not going to go to, the Black church talking about, civic engagement and me lead with me not being religious. You know what I'm saying? To me, intersectionality means I'm meeting somebody where they're at. You feel me? If I'm going to the streets and I'm talking about policy, I'm not going to talk about policy with the brother on the street that's saying I'm talking about policy with the Congressional Black Caucus. And it's recognizing to me the different ways and how identity uniquely shows up. I think right now, in terms of intersectionality, a lot of the ways that gender wars manifest themselves is really through a lens of like class, really through a lens of like how Black people are situated within social economic backgrounds. For instance, we know right now there is a big controversy due to a polo ad about the, more affluent Black people that's going to Martha's Vineyard. These type of discussions, it really, I would argue, you feel me, it dictates how we have conversations around gender. I.e., when we're talking about Meg Thee Stallion, or we're talking about, a woman that got hit with a brick, or we're talking about the victims of P. Diddy, there's a particular way that I think class infuses how we start talking about being promiscuous. I want to say something else. Being promiscuous or being legitimate or having some autonomy and being able to say, hey, this how you gonna mess with my body, this how you ain't gonna mess with my body. You feel me? And I think that because we're not really to have a conversation about how class really be framing how we understand how we interact as genders, you know what I'm saying? Black men, black women, I think it get in the way. So when we start talking about policy uniquely, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about gender, let's talk about gender reproductive freedom, right? From a gender war standpoint, now everything about reproductive freedom for black women is now being coded as what white feminists want. And then you have people on the internet parroting horrible criticisms that white men have for white feminism, thinking they're criticizing black feminism, i.e., they ain't did no reading. So they don't know that black feminists is critiquing the way in which white women come to think about femininity and womanism. The reason why it's a part of the gender wars is because a lot of these arguments is being manufactured in the manosphere. It's being manufactured with the Kevin Samuel, you know what I'm saying, the generous disciples. It's being generated by Andrew Tate. It's being generated by that side of Twitter. This is who's impacted and having the most appeal to our young boys. You know what I mean? They don't care about gender pronouns. They don't care about, you know what I'm saying, thinking about abortion or thinking about gender care. They care about feeling like they are a boy, feeling like they are a man, feeling like they're being masculine. And as a result, there are certain narratives that really appeal to them more than appeal to everybody else. So it takes me back to intersectionality. How can we get young black boys and young black men to start thinking about black women in a way that is always in community in terms of race, and that does not always, and it does not disavow how we're in community in terms of race? Like, don't repeat what the white boy is saying, bro. Don't repeat that.
You caught me off guard there because I thought you were gonna keep going.
My
Um,
bad.
no worries, because I think that leads to a good segue to the next question around like just the role we're playing. And Kyra, if it's oh great, we are actually here. Great, yes. So I wanted to come to this because I thought that this this bell hooks piece here or influence piece here speaks to what you were just saying around these false roles that we've been given largely by white men and in white men of class. Like, pulling it all together, we are mimicking oftentimes what the white echelon, the white elites have put forth. As a little bit of a side note, but kind of again bringing it together. I went to check out the Dandyism exhibit at the Met a couple months back, and the starting point of it really does talk about how Black dandyism really started one as a project of whites and white slave owners, and how they would dress up their property to reflect the opulence that they had, but also in a way to it forced them to stand out as property. And then from there, at post emancipation, it became a way for us to signify our freedom, for us to signify the ways in which we had advanced. But as this outtake here puts it, Bell Hooks was not perfect, but she understood that the trap is not that Black men have power they refuse to give up. The trap is that Black men are forced to perform power they will never hold. She knew that Black men were conscripted into a role that is imposed and impossible. And I think that is part of the conditioning that we've all been under, Black men, Black women. And so to that point, and to keep the conversation moving, um, I would center it in this way is, as I noted, Higher Heights work is to help build Black women's political power, to improve the lives of Black people through this work. In that, as I noted at the top, Black men and Black women have been the backbone of strengthening and progressing American democracy. I have said for the last few years now that the door of social change is the Black community. And so what I mean by that is when we see social change, when we elevate Black communities, the entire paradigm changes, all demographics rise up. And so I want to ask you, what role do you want to play in the campaign for Black advancement and liberation?
Uh, think being a liaison for how power is enacted in our community, in terms of us being actors, but also how we are acted upon in our community in terms of how different institutions and systems act upon us. Right now, I feel like a lot of people in our community don't give a damn, just being real, right? So for me, it's like, how can I use my platform to sprinkle and or plant a seed to make it where you start to give a damn? Where you start to think about the ways that policy is curated, impact how you put food in your mouth, how you put food on the table, how you keep the roof over your head. How can I help more individuals think that civic engagement is just as cool as going to the bar and getting hookah and drinks? Being
That
like the simple, like this being straightforward. You feel me? We're gonna talk about Love Island. What would it look like for us to have the same investment? You see what I'm saying? That we have in Love Island when it comes to policy. Are you as concerned with gerrymandering in Texas and how it's gonna impact the rest of the country as you was in Hutto? No, then we got a problem. You know what I'm saying? And it's just thinking about how the distractions, trauma to me, that's how our trauma and that's how our struggles start to get weaponized against us. The last thing I say on this is that I believe we will be fools if we don't think that the powers to be was paying attention, how gender wars uniquely impact the Black community, and how we are willing to throw our unity out the window, all based in who is right in terms of the gender wars. I'm talking about they see it. You feel me? Surveillance is everywhere. Just like y'all watch content, they watch content as well. Just like y'all see the foolishness, they see the foolishness as well. The only difference is they thinking about how can we use this emotional response from this community in order to make it where they're focused on that instead of this. Right now we fighting fascism. We got people arguing about Martha's Vineyard. That what we talking about? And to me, these things is how we use our trauma and how people how our trauma gets used as a placeholder and a substitute of paying attention over there, and now we fighting with each other. It's like, bro, what's going on?
that's it. It's recognizing that, like you said, that they're paying attention to the same sort of conversations. The algorithms are tracking, the engagement rates on this piece of content or on that piece of content, and then they're elevating it, where it needs to. Uh, the social media dilemma, it came out, I think, what, in 2020,
Yeah.
and it has this really good piece of it where it's making a joke of it, but it's like you see the people in the control room and they're like pulling the levers and pushing the buttons to make sure that you pay attention to the social media app. So it's like, oh, you went 2 hours without paying attention. Uh, do a notification that your friend just joined, and it's just like, oh, now let's pay attention. And next thing you know, you're seeing this piece of content. And really what it takes are small margins. It's small, it takes literally a small a shift, 5% here, 7% there, to completely alter a progressive platform, sorry, a progressive direction in which we were going in. And so I'm happy that you kind of went there with that as a part of what we need to be doing, or the role that we should be playing. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about like how we actually get to engaging with one another as Black men, Black women. How do we move beyond again the gender wars and the rhetoric? Like really, how do we get to understanding each other? So how do we get to a place of listening to understand and responding to support? Moreover, what tips can we provide this audience for talking to Black men about Black women's issues? How do we want to hear these things?
Um, I think that a lot of issues that we talked about can be more framed in how it impacts the community and not just the individual demographic. I feel like a lot of us have become lost in the sauce of individualism, and we think about policy from an individualistic standpoint. So it's about me, and if it ain't about me, then I don't care about it. So I think that if we frame more policy about how it uplifts the community and not just Black women, which I think it should be no issue with that, but if we being real and we just trying to get some things done, it's gonna be certain concessions we gotta be willing to make. And just sad to say it to y'all Black women, but it's gonna be some brothers need their hand held. Just keep being honest. Some there's going to be some coddling. You feel me? I don't think everybody can do it. Everybody can't coddle everybody, but there are going to be certain individuals and certain, you know what I'm saying, certain Black women and certain Black men, they will be able to have a relationship where it's about building consciousness, building understanding, and it's going to involve a little coddling. It's going to involve a little of the emotional labor that we always have to ask y'all as Black women. You know what I mean? And to me, just when we having conversations, it's being able to account for the various shortcomings that this civil society has had for Black men uniquely. Right now, there's a lot of conversations about how Black boys are not in education. Instead of us blaming Black boys for being lazy and not having this, that, and the other, is thinking about how has this institution, higher education, allowed for Black boys to either A, not be retained, or B, they ain't appealing to them unless they running touchdowns or dunking basketballs. This is a part of the conversation that I think makes it where people feel like they hurt and they pain ain't being heard. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what's coming down to. The Black boys and Black men that I talk to feel as if the Democratic Party and politics has forgotten about them and has literally done it in a way to make it where black women progression is always made at the expense of Black men. Do I believe that? Excuse my French. Hell no, I don't. But are there people in the society are there Black people in our community and on social media that believe that? Yes.
So yes, 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 yes. And I'm actually going to add some historical context that um when we talk about again where the roots, I love to get to the roots of things because I think when you start to look at the root of things, you're actually able to start to understand how the problem has not only just continued to grow, but then the offshoots that it has then gone to. And one of them is around what you just talked about, and actually this is actually some in the presentation a bit too around the lack of Black men in educational spaces today. But we have to then again go back to the root of this, and we have to then be able to identify that whiteness, white supremacy. You could say late 80s, early 90s started to take a concerted effort, and you could even, if you wanted to, go back to the 70s, where there was a more concerted effort to target Black men, Black teens, Black boys. And in that, what we saw was a shift to social programs that were then specifically targeting young Black girls. In this, you could look at it still as a racist endeavor because in that it was largely looked at as let's empower them just a little bit because we already see them at the bottom of the totem pole anyway, and so giving them a little bit of the apple will be enough. And then on the back end, what it has done is it has continued to increase this divide. So with that, today we see Black women are the most educated demographic in the country, but they're also still some of the least paid. And so right there, we can see again the nuances that are in play that continue to make the conversations harder to have because if at that point we have to then start looking at it again at a class perspective and then that goes into what we just talked about from the bell hooks and recognizing around the role that we're playing. And so as I want to bring it full circle and then continue to tie it into the presentation that you have, you talked about here time to periodically unplug. That's encouraged culturally. And I would say that not necessarily, in needing to unplug, but realizing that there's these conversations that need to now happen between each other. Person to person, community member to community member in small groups. We need to again start taking what's happening here in this space and moving it forward to another space of dialogue. One of the key things that we'll be talking about from a higher heights perspective is picking up the phone. and calling your friends, calling your family members, calling that homeboy, that homegirl that you know is on the fringes. And we can move it past being on the fringes of political affiliation and know that they're on the fringes of education access. They're on the fringes of economic poverty. They're on the fringes of not having community and support, and call those folks in. And start offering them the tidbits that you're getting from these conversations, offering them the tidbits from the equity and leadership, the voting rights and restoration training, so that on top of that, the civics 101 training, so they know who to go and talk to and start advocating for themselves. So in that, this is where, we start to get to constructive points of view, and places that we're able to see each other. Kyra, I'm actually go to the last, that MLK slide as a part of this question here. But as you noted here, this last line, the goal is for our hatred and contempt to grow so large that we forget we need each other to survive. And sadly, we have begun to believe that we don't. And we added this MLK quote in here: "A justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I think that that really just sums up the point. Is continues or continue to sum up the point, is that we really in this together. And that, my black women, friends, family members, cousins, whoever, that their problems are my problems, as I navigate my own intersectionality challenges and impacts, that I still can offer them something as a way forward. So I'm happy that was really, something that we got to as a talking about, um in talking about how do we hear each other and how do we listen. So you mentioned education, and so I want to provide some space here now to talk about, as Black men, what spaces are we missing from, and what message should we be bringing to various communities about these issues?
Man, I think we missing in education. I think we're missing in the immigration space. I think we're missing in reproductive freedom space. I think that because so many of us have felt like we've been lost in kind of I ain't gonna say like we've been forgotten, or feel like we have to quote unquote get it out the mud. It to me it makes it where we don't value things like education because it's the long way. You know what I'm saying? It's easier ways to get a CDL or to go, you know what I'm saying, engage in a little legal activity or to do some Bitcoin. Or to me, these are things that take Black men away from thinking about politics in terms of how it impacts community. Because now you think you're such a provider and such a hustler, the community don't matter to you because you're gonna get it anyway. You know what I'm saying? Or you start feeling like, the way in which everybody gonna do something, it won't impact you anyway, so you don't care. So to me, it's just thinking about these two specific things. To me, thinking about what types of industries are really appealing to Black boys specifically, and what industries is not. And I know this thinking about politics and education. I think that there is a lack of Black men in these spaces, and especially when it comes to thinking about the Black community. I think that we being real, it's a lot of people that's in politics that are Black, but they're not pro-Black community. You know what I'm saying? I think that because we have a lot of different perspectives on what it means to be pro-Black community, I think that's kind of leads sometimes into the divide and conquer. You know what I mean? But like if we continue to have this narrative that say Black boys is lazy, and the reason why we ain't investing in education because we don't care, that alienates more Black boys and Black men from getting on board. Just keeping it a stat.
Yeah, it's going like to circle back real quick when we talk about like tips, right? And how what the language we use. We have to recognize, you said this earlier about being able to be adaptive, is recognizing the intersectionalities that exist, within our lived experiences, right? So I previously worked on the census for the New York Public Library, and that was a real great opportunity for myself to be able to broaden my understanding of vast uh, groups of people, vast demographics. But in that also, I was able to really better understand Black American history through the census experience. And what I came out of that with was an understanding that 9 times out of 10, you got to give Black people the benefit of the doubt. Because when you go back to the roots of the things, you start to then you really get at white supremacy and whiteness being a roadblock. And so a roadblock when it comes to access to education is oftentimes funding, is oftentimes role models, is oftentimes the economics on the familiar and not just funding in terms. And when I say funding, initially I'm talking about the institutions themselves, then being able to hire Black men educators to have in these spaces to be representatives and be role models, and then on the back end, the economics of the family and what impacts that has on educational attainment and advancement as well. And so I offer that to continue the conversation around just being more understanding. If I were to continue the thread of this training series and go back to the first one that I did around our leadership, and it's understanding that we have to be adaptable to the individuals, to the community members that we are engaging in. Not there quite yet, Ira. Um, we have to be we have to be engaging. We have to be flexible to the communities that we're engaging with, because if not, that's when we start to miss them. That's where we start to lose them. And so to continue talking about direct engagement and ensuring that we're connecting the dots, ensuring that we're bringing the community along, what spaces would you say we can start inviting Black women into? So that Black men can hear directly from them. This is an opportunity to give the audience, like I said, the info as they picking up the phone and they're calling their friends, their family, their networks, talking to their homeboys, their homegirls, to say, hey, let's go to this place and talk about the policies, talk about the issues, become, storytellers in the movement for liberation and advancement. So what spaces can we be inviting Black women to?
I feel like I'm being mindful of how I answer this question because I don't want to set up no Black woman for failure in terms of dealing with a hyper violent space or a space that's not going to be pro them. But giving you that disclaimer, the space is something to tell you is going when you go in, with a little swivel, like how y'all already gonna do as a Black woman anyway. But I'm thinking like barber shops, virtual gaming spaces, um, uh, courts, parks. To me, thinking about where Black men where are we situated when we're not thinking about politics? Typically not thinking about politics anyway, but you know what I'm saying, getting into thinking about when it happens. I don't think there's a physical place. I think that how dialogue happens is much more important. Like how do we invite more Black men to have dialogue with Black women? Because I think that in this virtual reality, you don't necessarily have to be a IRL in real life space and place. It's really thinking about when you come across somebody in my comment section or on Twitter or Threads or Facebook, how do you engage? How do you engage Black men when talking about the 92% of Black women that voted for Kamala Harris? How do we engage Black men when we start talking about how, some Black men bought into the narrative that she locked up all these Black men? How do we engage them on that where we don't come off as being self-righteous or don't come off as being shut up, I'm telling you right, you wrong. You know what I'm saying? To me, though, that's more important. You feel me? Like what's more important is how we had these conversations and how now people start coming off as being uppity, being bougie, being elite, that's what I'm talking about in terms of how these conversations impact in terms of like social economic background. When we think about the Diddy trial, I can think about the Diddy trial in terms of race, but also, I mean, in terms of gender, Black men, Black women, big way, but also think about it in terms of class. And what I know is that for the most part, people that's more educated, like Black folks that's more educated, seeing the Diddy case in a whole different light than people that's not. You see what I'm saying? So now we think about the correlation, and this is the we got right now. Why Black men face so many barriers to college education? So if I'm already creating a distinction between individuals having a perspective that have a college background and those that don't, can we see a direct correlation in terms of gender? See what I'm saying? So now we start talking about the DDG Holly Bailey case, or we're talking about Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. These are all instances that we can see how gender and class is impacting how dialogue operates. And me personally, not putting this on y'all, but me personally, I think as a community, we gotta be able to have a conversation about have-nots, haves, people who got it, people who don't got it, but also thinking about, hey, yes, they got some disposable income, but they not Jeff Bezos. They not Mark Zuckerberg. Yes, you can go wear your polo in Martha's Vineyard, but you not that. You see what I'm saying? And because you're not willing to have a real conversation, it always make it where the pathology gets packed into these gender wars. You see what I'm saying? It gets packed into it. So now we can't even unpackage it because we got reactionary think pieces. We got reactionary think pieces and people that want to put it in a vacuum and think that it will not impact how Black community champion around Black policies, especially when they're directly implicated in these social phenomenal, you know what I'm saying, instances. If you don't think the Diddy trial was about how Black men are caught up and or think Black men are caught up in the system, then you ain't paying attention. I think bro was guilty, but that does not negate, you see what I'm saying, how other Black men believe this is a narrative if you're trying to take down other powerful Black men. Now, if I'm trying to get Black men to think about policy, I can't go in there being like, you dumb, shut up, you a rapist, you an abuser, you an abuse apologist. They don't listen to me. You see what I'm saying? So I'm already going in thinking about the vulnerability in the situation. Y'all all are worried about potentially being targeted by the system. We can think about, are you doing what Diddy doing? But to me, that involves a conversation and not like a, you feel me? And I think that just to me in politics writ large, most Black folks in politics writ large come off as being self-righteous, uppity, bougie to Black folks not in politics. It's plain and plainly. You see what I'm saying? Right now, I'm in DC. I go to that side of DC, dress how I'm dressed right now, they're gonna look at me a particular way. When we had these conversations about Black men, Black women, we gotta be able to have tough conversations about the realness in this being like, hey, are you ready to be made uncomfortable? I'm finna make some now. We finna have a conversation about, you know what I'm saying? And conversation, I agree. I put the comments up now, y'all. So conversation, not interrogation. Shout out to you, Karen. I agree.
Yes. And I think that that's a real good segue into this last part. And so I would also take this moment to prompt the audience. If you have questions that you want to ask either of us, feel free to drop those now. I want to go to how do we move towards of the vehicle. And so like one of the key things of putting forth this training series is to ensure that the audience has tips, tools, that when they walk away from this conversation, they may not remember any specific one thing that we said, but there's some real ability for them to go out and start to do some things. So for Black men that will see this content, how can we better support Black women's leadership, specifically those who are seeking out elected office and trying to make policy changes?
I would start with the prerequisite. If you believe Black women leadership is a threat, we need to unpackage why you think this is a threat. If you see Black women Black women co-sign legislation and you think that based off of face value because it's curated by them, you see it's a threat, we gotta unpackage that. The issue is that I think that there are a lot of underlying issues that literally are on the bed of what we talk about. So even though we had this moving vehicle, we're not addressing the foundation. And to me, it's just being real. There are some Black men that have an issue with Black woman leadership. I can't even talk to you about how to support Black women leadership if you don't believe in it. And believe in it, not saying it don't exist, believe in it as in you disagree with it. You feel me? And I think that that's a part of the conversation that needs to be had. But also to me, is thinking about how specific policies and specific issues not only impact Black women, but how it impact the whole community. Everybody got a big mama. Everybody got a grandmama. Everybody, how can I relate to you in terms of thinking about how this policy gonna impact your big mama or your favorite auntie? Now, for me, coming from philosophy and academia, I don't think it's good typically for me to try to get you to care about women based off your relationship to some random woman. Like you should just care about women, not because you got a mama or a sister. But can we agree as an audience right now, as a group right now? Everybody don't think like that. Some people only care about women insofar how they relate to them. So it's just really being able to call out disrespect and being able to do it in a way where it is teachable moments and not, you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I mean? Like how can we create a stasis point for us to be on a level playing field for us to have a conversation and not be feeling like you talking down to me, talking down to you. And then when it comes to me thinking about supporting policies, we gotta get away from a lot of the political buzzwords.
Mm.
Black men, Black women don't give a damn. Really, like when you talking about policy, Tell me how it's gonna impact me. Like, I don't care. It's billionaires, I'm poor. You telling me that billionaires get something, so what? I'm poor. What do we do now? And to me, it's just like a lot of things that's going on right now. It's two structures around oligarchs. You know what I mean? Imagine me going to Third Ward of Houston talking about some oligarchs and oligarchies. They don't care. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it's just really thinking about how can this message really hit the people we talking about. And to me, that goes outside of gender, you know what I'm saying, constructs, and thinking about as Black people, like, can you tell me how this mattered to me? I know you care about it, but what does it matter to me?
So to that point, and then to make sure we save some time for audience questions, I want to go to the last question I have here for this part of the dialogue. And so it's in reverse. How can
Mm.
Black women support Black men leadership and initiatives?
I think that a lot of the things I said, vice versa, applies. I think the uniqueness is being able to this first bullet point, being able to advocate for policies that address mass incarceration, mental health, job access, education disparities that's affecting Black boys and Black men, but then being able to tie that to the writ large community. To me, I always think about the Say Her Name campaign and the purpose of the Say Her Name campaign uniquely for Black men, Black women, and gender wars. When we talk about mass incarceration, we know that Black women not immune to it. You know what I'm saying? But we know in our community, there's a uniqueness that's always associated with Black masculinity and mass incarceration. So being able to advocate for these policies while also talking about how they impact, you know what I'm saying, Black women or the community real large, that's how I've been able to build kinship and be a bridge and give olive branches and be a liaison with Black men that wasn't thinking this way on Monday, but I talked to them on Wednesday and on Thursday, and damn it, by Saturday, they came on board by being able to talk about specific issues that impact them and then think about how they start doing it. You feel me? And don't get me wrong, the Say Her Name campaign was definitely hijacked white supremacy, but it's important to talk about how, yes, Black women also face, you know what I'm saying, police brutality. You know what I mean? That's also unique. And to me, being able to advocate for these specific issues that on face value is seen as being capital BM, Black masculinity, Black men, is being able to like be a coalition build, being with those coalitions. And the last thing I say too is that if we can acknowledge that education is a tool to be able to get people to get into spaces in terms of access, we got to acknowledge how there is a disproportionate level of Black men that's poor. Black men ain't got no education. If you don't keep that in mind when talking to, it's gonna come off as being the bougie, uppity, self-righteous, Martha Vineyards, polo rocking person that ain't trying to hear you. You see what I'm saying? And what I know is that I got 3 degrees, but I'm not finna go talk in certain instances and use all my $10, $15 academic, you know what I'm saying, words. I'm gonna say you feel me, you know what I'm saying, to talk the language who I'm talking to. If they don't understand me and feel me, then what are we doing? And to me, that's past Black men, Black women. That's just like when you come to the community, you talking about policy, understand they ate sleep for dinner last night. So you talking about going to the ballot booth, how does it make it where I don't have to decide between getting insulin and paying a light bill? Next week, I don't care about that. I care about right now. And I think that just in social economics, more affluent Black people gotta recognize that the other Black people right now in politics is just it's cutting different. You feel me? Like what you care about over there ain't what we dealing with over here in terms of Black people. We're not a monolith. Damn it, show me, prove it to me in terms of dialogue and care.
Yes, I want to say thank you as we come to the conclusion of this for this conversation, and I want to make sure I do it a service by connecting all of that because that last part of what you just noted, you circled back around to all of it in this moment around like intersectionality. You talked about the ability to be able to dialogue about those particular issues, and then in that you brought it full circle in that there are Black women within the community that face that same challenge, and the reality is being able to then figure out what's the language that we need as we are going to these different groups to be able to connect with them. That is intersectionality there. It's recognizing the different points of our lived experience that cross over. For Black women, it's being Black and it's being a woman. For Black men, it's being Black, but that doesn't necessarily exclude that poverty or lack of education may be in there, incarceration, mental health. maternal health issues. You have a wife, a girlfriend, a mom, whatever challenges that may came with someone that just, is in community with you. And so it to me just was a great point to hear as we were, as that's the last, last formal question that we had. But it really just tied it all together.
I say one last thing. I'll make it quick. In terms of gender wars, our compromise and resolution cannot come at the expense of Black, trans, Black, gender nonconforming people. Being somebody on the internet, the times I see Black men and Black women who want to knock each other's head through the washer and dryer virtually every other day only show solidarity when it's about erasing the experience of Black trans people. That is not cool. It's not where it's at. They also pay attention. If you're wondering why so many Black people, especially on the internet, were so loud about MAGA, it's because they sip the Kool-Aid. We don't, I hate trans people, you hate trans people, you know what, you're white supremacists, and I'm a Black, but who cares? We can bond and have solidarity, and I hate for trans people. Don't do that. And as Black men, Black women, especially cisgender, we cannot allow for people in our community to become the collateral for how we come together in the community. It's counterproductive, like it don't make sense. That's all I want to say. Just want to make sure that was said explicitly.
I so agree. And to me, that continues to speak to intersectionality. It's recognizing again that we are all for ourselves individually searching for what America's supposed to be around life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for folks that I identify as Black, there are challenges that are beyond our control. I really quickly want to get to these two questions that are in the chat. The first one is from Taylor around how do we encourage Black men to engage more with young Black boys outside of sports? And then I'll take some of this and I'll open the floor as well to you to answer. And then the second question is, what is the controversy around Polos and Martha's Vineyard? So just real quick on the first question around encouraging, I want to lead with it's happening already. There are tons of Black men engaging with young Black boys that are not their sons, that are not their biological sons. I think we oftentimes see, throughout the school year where there's this school that puts out a notice for Black men to show up, or sometimes men in general to show up for the young Black boys or the young boys in the school without a dad, or just to come to be a mentor. And you hear about the overwhelming support that comes out. That is happening more often than we see in the news media. And again, it goes back to those algorithms that are controlling what's popping up. So I would just encourage us to know that even if we're not necessarily seeing it in our everyday spaces, it's happening. And then two, to connect with organizations, follow folks that are talking about it, and then ask those folks, where are those organizations? Because then they'll be able to point you to them. The reality is while there are a lot of things that are on social media for our public consumption and then for our education, there are so many more things that are not there. And so I think that that's just an important point to note with it as well. And I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that or take the poll.
I would say it's gonna sound crazy how I start off, but I would say split up our humanity in terms of being a doer and in terms of being a being. I think a lot of times when us as Black men we engage, we only engage based off what we do or what we doing or what we can do. I.e., an athlete is not a being, it's something you do. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna be an athlete forever. You might be an athlete right now in 2022, but when you turn 45, we're gonna, you know what I mean? So to me, it's thinking about how can I connect with other Black boys and Black beings on the level of humanity in terms of their being and what their being is becoming, getting a little philosophical. You know what I'm saying? To me, I feel like a lot of times us as Black men, we get caught up in being a provider. And as a result, we only see ourselves based off of what we can do insofar how we provide. The issue becomes, I'm not doing much right now, or I don't find value in what I'm doing right now, or what I'm doing right now ain't allowing me to provide how I want to provide. So now, in terms of my masculinity and being a man, I don't know what to do because I only value myself in terms of doing. I don't value me as a being. And I think that there's a lot of times we engage each other and we engage each other through this lens. Like, what you doing? You ain't got no value, productivity or nothing. It's just like, what about the human? What about the feelings and the empathy and the pain? and the vulnerability of being a man and not being able, that's what we need to get into. And right now we got to build a climate to do it.
We got a little time left. I want to make sure we get to these questions. If you could quickly share a little bit more on the Polo Martha's Vineyard controversy, and then I'll take the last question and wrap up.
I'll make it quick. I'm gonna give you a simplified version, but I definitely, if you want more information, I think you can type in Polo Martha's Vineyard on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, and you're gonna get more of it. But long story short, you know, there is a history of Black affluent people being at Martha's Vineyard that, you know what I'm saying, got a little bit more capital than other Black people. As a result, you know what I'm saying, they have their own culture over there. Polo, as a extension of doing their Black HBCU partnership, they also did a special, you know, line lease with like some special polos that's commemorating the Black people that was at Martha's Vineyard. There was a lot of controversy on the internet about accessibility, poor Black people, rich Black people, middle class Black people. Being real with you, distraction. It's a reason why if you go to my platform, I didn't engage with it because it's like, man, we got real. I got metaphorically, I got bigger fish to fry. I ain't got no grease to waste on this. I really don't, like, at all. You see what I'm saying? So don't waste your time on it, Carrie. Don't even, you feel me? If you just want the tea, quote unquote, go look it up. But being real with you, it ain't that serious. It's just a cool reference I thought that was good in the moment to get your attention, but it ain't that. It is what it is.
So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna answer this last question, but I want to realistically thank the chat for the active engagement in this conversation. It was something interesting to see just the notes that come in as we're having this dialogue. To answer this last question about how do we, what are some examples of how do we connect immediate survival needs to broader policy change? I always like to use this lived experience example. When I first started working, I used to work in direct service as a direct service provider for a large nonprofit in the Bronx. And I worked with students that were essentially off track in their high school career. And I would talk to them, and many of them, again, were facing economic challenges. They needed to work for one reason or another. And in that, you know, they saw this as the most immediate thing that they had to be doing. And so the conversation there went to, I understand, you know, this current moment and where you're at in certain instances in life, what it calls for us to do is make, you know, greater efforts. We oftentimes call it sacrifices, but a greater effort, because for to say sacrifices to someone like that, they're already making hard choices and sacrifices. So again, we have to think about our language. And so it's not about, you know, sacrifices. It's about we have to give a little bit more so that in this current moment it's rough. But what we're then doing is setting up an action plan for something greater in our lives. And so I would encourage that that's where the conversation goes. It's being able to recognize that where they're at is again giving Black people 9 times out of 10 the benefit of the doubt. So that's not on you. Cool, recognizing that as the starting point, and then talking about what the voting does, what the going to talk to your elected official does, is it won't necessarily impact today or maybe even tomorrow, but you do start to make a plan for next week, next month, next year, and so forth. With that, that is our time. I have truly enjoyed this conversation. I think you all can see that we could have kept talking for another 15 to 20 minutes, for
For sure.
for sure. But I want to thank you sincerely for making the time to have this conversation. I thought that there were some really great points made here in this dialogue, and I truly do believe and hope that what you were able to see were two Black men articulate the issues, level set, provide some tips, some tools, and that this conversation, this dialogue serves as a resource and in your abilities and in your own movement spaces to take it to higher heights. So with that, I will thank you all. Say have a safe and good night, and we hope that you continue to tune in next week for our digital security presentation that will be led by Rosalind Smith, who I believe I saw in the chat at some point tonight. Without that, or without anything else, I will say good night.